Heritage Kitchener's April 2nd meeting. We have a new member from staff returning, and I'd like to welcome Michelle Drake. And Michelle, do you have any words you'd like to share with the committee?
Through you, Mayor Chair. Through you, Chair. I'm happy to be back. Some of you are familiar faces. As Jean mentioned, my name's Michelle Drake. I'm the city's senior heritage planner, and excited to be back working with the committee and working with my colleagues in the council chambers today.
Thank you, Michelle. And Michelle has a long history with this Heritage Kitchener, and we're really pleased that she was able to come back and join us. So now on to the agenda. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, general nature thereof. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a conflict for item 4.3, 10 Duke Street. My employer is involved with the project.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll take note of that. Any others? Seeing none, let us then go to delegations. And do we have one? All right. Yes, sorry. Thank you. We're now going to proceed with our discussion items. 4.1 is a draft heritage impact assessment regarding 236-264 Victoria Street North. And Jessica Vera, our heritage planner, will provide a brief presentation and overview. Jessica, please.
Sorry, Madam Chair, having some technical difficulty. There we go. Okay. So through you, the Chair, the first item on the agenda is a heritage impact assessment for the lands municipally addressed as 236 to 264 Victoria Street North. These lands are located on the north side of Victoria Street North, and they do have no heritage status, having been on the inventory but reviewed and removed in 2005. They are, however, adjacent to a number of heritage resources, including properties within the Civic Centre Neighbourhood Heritage Conservation District, and they are also located within the Warehouse District Cultural Heritage Landscape, hence the need for an HIA. The HIA was requested as part of an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment that has been submitted for the subject lands. This OPA and ZBA are proposing a mixed-use development comprised of 3 towers ranging 18 to 40 stories in height. The properties were evaluated against Ontario Regulation 906 and determined to meet only one criteria, therefore not meeting the threshold for designation. No negative impacts to the adjacent heritage resources were identified as determined by the Ontario Heritage Toolkit, but commemoration of the subject lands is recommended within this development. And that concludes my summary.
Thank you, Jessica. I just want the committee to be aware that there are no decisions or recommendations on this subject matter, and Heritage staff is seeking committee's feedback. So we have a delegation on this matter. Jillian Smith is in attendance to respond to any questions from the committee. Jillian, please come forward. And I have to say, if you're speaking into the mic, just please speak into it, because the sound doesn't always carry that well. Thank you. So welcome, Jillian. For our delegation then, are there any questions on this proposal? Yes, Peter.
Thank you. Could you tell me the criteria, the single criteria that was met under Regulation 906?
Yes, so it met criteria 4, which was the associated value having, it's associated with a significant industry, being Greb Industries and Bauer Hockey, which originated on the subject land. So we think that that is a significant association, which is why we are recommending commemoration.
Thank you.
Is that fine, Peter? You have your answer.
I beg your pardon?
You have your answer.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. I just wondered if there was any consideration of building around the building rather than demolishing it?
Yes, so as part of our evaluation, we looked at the physical value, and we believe that the office building that is at 236 Victoria Street North, we are assuming that it was built in 1960s and is associated with Bauer Hockey when it was being manufactured on the subject lands. But the building has been altered such that it doesn't retain its original form or function, and its appearance is sort of not what it was originally designed to look like, and therefore we don't think that it has heritage integrity and does not meet that criteria.
So were changes made to the exterior of the building in the 60s, you're saying?
Yes, so I can just give a brief overview of the history if that would be a little bit more clear. So the property at 264 Victoria Street North was where Western Shoe Company started. It merged with Greb Industries in the 1960s, at which point they purchased the property at 236 Victoria Street North and expanded their facilities and built this factory at 236, which is now an office building. In the 90s, Bauer Hockey, which was an arm of Greb Industries and which was manufactured on the subject lands, was sold to Nike, and majority of the complex was demolished except for what we think is this office building, at which point in the 90s or early 2000s it was remodeled and altered from its original factory form.
On the interior?
Yes, it's an office building now, so the exterior and interior were altered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Are there any other questions for the delegation? Yes, Alona.
Given that these locations previously held factories, are there any concerns regarding the possibility of there being ground contamination? Is that something that is being considered?
I'm not 100% sure on that. It could be possible, but I'm not doing the planning on this. I'm just doing the heritage, so it certainly could be a consideration, but I can't answer 100% whether that's something that that's being looked at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alona. Any other questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much, Jillian. And now we have the opportunity as members to ask staff questions, make comments on this proposal. We're not making recommendations, but we can make comments. So are there any comments for staff or questions to staff? Yes, Ilona.
I reviewed the HIA that was provided to us, and I just had a few concerns. So firstly, in regards to the shadows the buildings will cast, while they say that there is no impact in the heritage impact assessment, there is actually an impact to the surrounding area because of the height of the building. So I'm curious to see how they can say that there is no impact when, given the height of the buildings, there's definitely an impact to the surrounding area. It also describes the direct or indirect obstruction of views to the surrounding cultural heritage attributes, and it indicated that there is no impact at all to the cultural heritage attributes, but given that the height of the buildings and just the size of the structure, I'm not understanding how there cannot be any impact or obstruction of the cultural heritage attributes as well. In addition, it talks about a change in land use, and currently the use of the buildings, or the current buildings, is for office and fitness center, which is very different from what is being proposed, which is residential mainly, with 100 or 1,076 residential units being added. So currently there is no residential use of that property. So I'm wondering also why their argument in the response indicates that there's no change in the land use. Also, with regards to land disturbance, the construction the impact of the construction on the surrounding properties would be significant, given the height and the amount of construction that would be required, the incoming vehicles, and even just putting in the footings for the towers would likely create a lot of disturbance to the neighborhood. So I'm also wondering about that criterion and why it was answered that there would be no impact. I think those were my biggest concerns. There was also a spelling error on the spelling of Wellington Street. It was Willington, so I just thought that should be corrected as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alona. There are comments from our member staff. Do you have any answers or comments to these comments?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can certainly respond to those. So I guess I'll address the first one, the shadow concerns. A shadow study has been completed and included within the Heritage Impact Assessment, and it was determined that there's only a brief period of time, it's around 6 o'clock in the evening over the summer months, in which there will be shadow cast onto the adjacent Civic Center. So that can be found as an attached dependency within the Heritage Impact Assessment. And it wasn't determined to be extensive enough to obscure the views of any identified heritage attributes, which is the concern when we talk about shadow impacts in heritage. In terms of the impact of views, again, that relates to the views of identified heritage attributes, of which there are none on the site, and views along the street of the Civic Center aren't expected to be impacted too. It's across the street, it's not within the actual Civic Center itself, so there's no anticipated impacts to the views either. And in regards to the land disturbances with construction, again, you're looking at a property that is across the street. It's not immediately adjacent to the designated buildings. And there's also additional studies that we can require at the site plan stage, including vibration monitoring reports if determined to be needed. So we can take a closer look at what the construction impacts would be. But by and large, to summarize, all of those impacts, everything is buffered by the right-of-way and the street.
Alona, do you have further questions?
No, thank you.
Out of curiosity, Jessica, how would staff deem it necessary to do further studies?
So we consider criteria like proximity to resources. If there's things like underground parking being proposed and there's going to be really deep like excavation needed, that's also another requirement too. But then we also consider the input of the committee and the input of our engineers too.
Thank you, Jessica. Any other comments, questions for staff? All right, thank you very much for this item. Then we'll move on to item 4.2, which is a heritage permit application, HPA 2024-IV-006, 1385 Bleams Road, the removal of a garage, DSD 2024 148, DSD 2024-148. And Diksha, you will provide a brief presentation. We have a chance to ask questions of staff. We will be looking at a recommendation. Diksha, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the heritage permit application is for 1385 Bleems Road. It's located on the south side of Bleems Road between Fisher Holman and Abram Clemens Street, and it's designated under Part 4 of the OHA. The permit is for the removal of this modern two-bay garage. The garage has no cultural heritage value and is not protected by the designating bylaw. However, according to the OHA, any demolition on a designated property requires council approval. It is staff's opinion that the demolition of this garage will not impact the cultural heritage value of the property, nor its reasons for designation. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Diksha. Questions for our staff? Any questions? I have a question. The chimney, is it also to be demolished as part of this?
Through you, Madam Chair, that was as part of a previous application that came last month. This is just for the demolition of the garage.
Right. Thank you very much then. All right. I will read the recommendation and then I will ask someone to move it. It was resolved that pursuant to Section 34 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Heritage Permit Application HPA 2024 IV-006 be approved to permit the demolition of the garage on the property municipally addressed as 1385 Bleems Road in accordance with the supplementary information submitted with this application. Could I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Questions?
Yeah, I just had a question. So we've already, was it here at council, we approved the removal of the chimney and of the fence, I seem to recall. And now the garage, do we anticipate further requests of this sort on this property?
Through you, Madam Chair, no. These are all, the demolition of the garage is part of a zoning bylaw amendment application. And further to this, there's no changes that are proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Any other questions, comments? So if this is unanimously approved, it will go to council, it will be approved and it goes to, is it going to council April the 8th?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, it goes back to DAA, to staff, if there is unanimous approval.
Thank you very much. All right, all those in favor of the recommendation? Carried unanimously. Next, we have 4.3, Notice of Intention to Designate 10 Duke Street West under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, DSD 2024-133. And Andrew, we know you're excused. Jessica Vera, our Heritage Planner, will make a brief presentation.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, this is a notice of intention to designate for a 3-story commercial brick building currently vacant that is located on the northwest corner of the Duke Street West and Queen Street North intersection. It is currently listed on our municipal heritage register, and an HIA has been completed as part of an active site plan application that is on the site. The assessment has determined that the property meets 5 of the 9 criteria. So in terms of its design and physical value, this is a representative example of the colonial revival architectural style for a commercial building. In terms of historical and associative value, it has a connection to the Economic Mutual Insurance Company, being the 5th headquarters of this company within the KW area. It also has a connection to William D. Euler, who is a distinguished citizen, having had an active role in both the educational and news sectors before establishing a political career. It also contributes to an understanding of the rapid growth of the economy and business operations in the post-World War II era. In terms of its contextual value, it remains in its original location on a prominent corner of a main street, and it is visually and physically linked to the streetscape in terms of its scale and massing. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Are there any questions for staff? Alona?
I thought I recalled previously that there was a tower that was planned to be built on top of this building. Is that still in the plan for this property?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is the plan, and we're anticipating a heritage permit to come in for that soon as this is designated or a notice of intention to designate is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alona. Other questions? Yes, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. So am I correct in saying that what's being proposed here, if this goes ahead, is that the south facade, the east facade, and a portion of the west facade will be retained and the rest of the building will be demolished?
That is correct, and there is also interior elements that will be conserved as well.
And how will they be conserved?
Through commemoration or through reinstating them within a lobby area.
So this is a typical example of facadism, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And is there anything staff can do to preserve more of the building and build on top of it?
So that was a question that we had asked during the site plan process, and this could be discussed to at greater depth when the actual heritage permit has come in. But to answer your question for now, that is something that we asked the applicants to explore, and their engineers came back and they told us that structurally the building would not be able to support the tower if it's retained in its entirety, and there was not enough room on the site to allow for them to build while also retaining the rest of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. It's thought and reflection. For staff, there were items in the report, special items that were highlighted, such as the stair railing, the newel post caps, the brass wall grills, the Roman travertine tile. And if there is anticipated use within the new building, is there a storage plan for keeping these materials, or is it part of the designation? How are we planning to ensure they're kept? Jessica?
So through you, Madam Chair, a documentation and salvage plan has been prepared as part of the site plan application, and it does identify the storage, or the salvage and the storage for these materials. So they'll be kept on pallets off of the ground in a climate-controlled storage unit until they're able to be reused.
Thank you, Jessica. Are there any other questions? If not, I'm looking for someone to move the recommendation, and if this report receives approval from the committee, it will go to council on April the 8th, 2024. So I will read the recommendation, and then someone please move it. It was resolved that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 10 Duke Street West as being of cultural heritage value or interest. Do I have a mover? Councillor Chapman, thank you. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. .4, our next agenda item, notice of intention to designate 91 Madison Avenue South under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, DSD 2024-138. And Jessica Vera, our heritage planner, will provide a brief presentation and overview. Jessica?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a notice of intention to designate for a two-story early 20th century religious building. It's located on the east side of Madison Avenue South, and it is currently listed on our Municipal Heritage Register. A review has been completed, and our assessment has determined that the property meets 6 out of the 9 criteria for designation. In terms of its design and physical value, this is a unique example of the Byzantine and colonial revival architectural style in Kitchener. It has historical and associative value due to its connection to the themes of early Jewish settlement within the area, and it can also yield an understanding of how religions diversified within the community as it grew and progressed, as this is the first synagogue within Kitchener. In terms of its contextual value, it contributes to the continuation and character of the Madison Avenue South streetscape and the Cedar Hill neighborhood cultural heritage landscape, being located in its original location and having its physical, visual, historical, and functional link to its surroundings. It also has a distinct architectural style, and it is located at the peak of a hill within the area, which means that it could be classified as a local landmark. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jessica. And now, members, we have an opportunity to question staff if we wish on this item. Are there any questions for staff? I would just like to ask staff as to if we approve this, then the owner is notified and they have a certain amount of time to respond back to staff before it goes to the next stage. Could you answer that, Jessica?
So through you, Madam Chair, we would notify the property owners once this has been reviewed by council and posted in the newspaper. This would be the 3rd time that we would be contacting them as per our process for our Municipal Heritage Register project. We have contacted them twice before.
Thank you very much for clarifying, Jessica. And now, I will read the recommendation. It was resolved that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 91 Madison Avenue South as being of cultural heritage value or interest. So could I have someone move the recommendation? Thank you, Elona. Any other questions? All those in favor? Carried unanimously, and that will go to council for approval April the 8th. And now we come to item 4.5, Bill 23, Municipal Heritage Register Review, April 2024, the update DSD 2024-131. And Diksha is going to make a presentation. However, there seems to be, perhaps out in the public, some misconception of how our process is going and what is going and how owners are informed. And again, because of this item in particular today, we have 4 properties that we wish to recognize for the cultural heritage value and interest. And I would just like to hear what is the process? Just review this so that we are out in the public and we're on the register to say, here's how we are informing the public. So I know Diksha is about to do the presentation on the properties. However, Jessica, you've had a lot to do over the several past years on this, in particular since Bill 23 came in. Would you like to go over the process, please?
I can certainly do that, Madam Chair. So in terms of engagement, when we were establishing our process at the beginning of 2023, we did want to ensure that there was ample opportunity for public engagement because this is an undertaking of a scale that we haven't attempted before. That's why we first contacted all property owners of the 231 listed properties at the establishment of our program back in May 2023. And at this point in time, we had invited any comments or concerns that they may have. The second time that we contacted property owners is once a property has been reviewed and we have determined with HK's input what direction we want to pursue with that property. So again, this is being done before the official designation process is initiated. As part of this point of contact, we do send a complete information package, which includes the updated statements of significance that we present to you all, as well as I guess you could call it a property owner's guide to heritage designation, which is a booklet that I put together. And finally, there's another letter which again establishes what exactly it is we are doing, why we are doing it, and invites any comment or feedback that they may have. Once that is done, we give them 30 days to respond. And then the primary goal of all of this is to try to get ahead of any points of conflict or concerns that property owners may have and try to mitigate or come to a solution that everyone is happy with. And we have had success in our approach here. Of course, that involves people needing to respond to our outreach. Once the formal process is initiated through a notice of intention to designate, we then inform property owners a third time, and it's only at this point in the process that we're actually mandated by the provincial legislation to contact owners. The final point of contact comes once the objection period for the notice of intention to designate is over and a designating bylaw has been passed by council. So to summarize, we are contacting owners at 4 different points throughout the process, and we're only required by the Ontario Heritage Act to contact them at 2 points in the process once the process has actually been initiated. We're contacting them at 2 additional points before we've even begun our formal notice of intention to designate. We established this process because we do recognize the importance of owner input in these undertakings.
Thank you very much, Jessica. And just further, supposing a owner gets a letter and they have concerns, and there's this timeline. They contact you, and do you have a discussion with them and further deliberation on it?
Through you, Madam Chair, we certainly do. There's been multiple times now where we've paused either reviewing a designating bylaw or paused bringing a notice of intention to designate forward in order to facilitate these discussions. You might recall when 91 Madison Avenue South went forward, we also brought forward another church. That one we've currently been in discussions with because there were some concerns. There was the same with 40 Chapel Hill. So we're happy to have some flexibility in our process and in our timelines if concerns are brought forward to discuss them and to try to find a solution for everyone.
Thank you, Jessica. That's a thorough overview. And now I would like to proceed with the 4 properties that are to be recognized. But what I would like to do is to have the 4 properties dealt with separately, and that we have a presentation from staff on each property, and then we vote on them separately. And but to do that, I need a motion to go ahead with that. And Natalie, thank you very much, has moved that. All those in favor? So we'll go at it separately. Thank you. And now, Deeksha, are you prepared to do the presentations? Thank you. So the first one that we have is 56 Duke Street West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 56 Duke Street West is located on the north side of Duke Street between Yonge Street and Ontario Street North. Staff have conducted an evaluation and have determined that the property meets 5 out of 9 criteria and has been recognized for its design, physical, historical, associative, and contextual value. The building was built as a rectory and is a notable and unique example of Gothic architectural style, and it also complements the Gothic architectural style of the St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church that is located right behind this building. The building is in good condition with many intact elements of the Gothic style of architecture, including but not limited to its Gothic arched windows, round windows with quatrefoils in the upper story, red brick construction, porticos, and projecting two-story bays on the front facade. The existing building has historical and associative value as it relates to its ownership and architect. The building was built by St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church as a rectory in 1922 at the cost of $46,000. The building also has associative value for its association with prominent architect Charles Netchell. He was born in Mannheim, Waterloo County in 1869, but never formally studied architecture and instead received much of his education and knowledge working with his father. He went on to work on more than 100 buildings in the Waterloo region, becoming a prominent architect in the area, and continued to practice for approximately 40 years until 1930. The building also has contextual value as being located on a block that's owned by St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church. It's located in its original location and continues to have a strong visual presence on Duke Street. Apologies. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Diksha. Are there any questions for Diksha on this one? So I'll read the recommendation and then I will look for one of you to move it. That pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the cultural heritage value or interest be recognized and designation be pursued for 56 Duke Street West. Who will move it? Councillor Chapman. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. 156 Duke Street West. Jessica, is this yours? Thank you, Jessica.
So the next property in our ongoing assessment is 156 Duke Street West, located on the north side of Duke Street West. We have determined that it meets 5 out of 9 criteria for designation, and it does have design and physical, historical associative, and contextual values. In terms of its design value, this is a notable example of the Renaissance Revival architectural style in an industrial building. Its historical and associative value lay in its connections to the ANC Bomer Box Company, as this is the original location of the company. It also has connections to the theme of economic development in the downtown area, and in addition, this building has the ability to yield an understanding of the community, as box companies can act as good barometers for economic conditions, given that almost every product produced needs to be packaged. So the historical growth and success of the box company was directly reflective of the growth and success of the city. In terms of its contextual value, this building remains in its original location within the city commercial core and in proximity to a number of the historical businesses that it used to service. It also has historical, physical, and visual links to its surroundings through its massing and design. Finally, while these are not official values identified within provincial legislation, it should be noted that the buildings possess both economic and environmental value as well. This building is an early example of adaptive reuse within the city, having been converted from an industrial and warehouse use to a residential use in 1987, and it continues to operate as apartments to this day. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jessica. Are there any questions for staff? Yes, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe this is for you, Garrett, I'm not sure, but so as we saw when the Growing Together zoning bylaws came forward, there were several properties that we had designated at the last Heritage Committee meeting. In particular, the peer group, the Rumpelfelt, and I think one on, was it Madison? Oh, I don't know where my notes are. Anyway, I think there's a third one. And in Growing Together, they were, 2 of them anyway, were rezoned to SGA 4, which is basically a tower where the sky is the limit with built form limitations. But here we have another example of what I presume is affordable housing in this building. Could you tell us how it is zoned in Growing Together?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I can certainly advise on that in just 1 second. I'm just pulling it up. I guess what's important to note is that today we are recommending pursuing with designation, which would give us the ability to have a more detailed review from a heritage perspective if this site were to ever redevelop. Growing Together, although the SGA 4 and the SGA 3 and even the SGA 2 and 1 zones do permit additional height and density, it doesn't mean that every site would automatically be redeveloped to the maximum in which that it could be redeveloped. This is actually an added layer of review and additional criteria, and the designating bylaw would have the heritage attributes outlined. So this would actually be a greater tool in terms of heritage conservation and preservation for this specific property, notwithstanding whatever the zoning was as part of Growing Together. But I will look that up in just 1 minute.
Actually, the third property was 33 EB Street, that I think was under Growing Together's come to be zoned as SGA 3, which is for 25 stories.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So again, I do have to go through the schedules to be able to pull those properties. So I'd probably keep the meeting moving along, but I will follow up with that answer, with the answer specifically what the zoning is. Again, none of the SGA 3 or 4 zones have a minimum building height. So although there are less built form regulations and standards, any of the heritage attributes as part of the heritage designation bylaw would continue to prevail. The Heritage Committee may remember that's a presentation from the Growing Together project management team back in January of this year. There was some language specifically that's proposed to be included in the official plan, and that was adopted by council and will be before the region for final approval. And policies outline and specifically it says where there is a heritage conservation district policy as an example of some of the other properties, that those policies will prevail. Again, this heritage conservation bylaw would prevail over the zoning with the attributes outlined.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Any other questions? All right, I shall read the recommendation. Pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the cultural heritage value of or interest be recognized and designation be pursued for 156 Duke Street West. Who would move this? Andrew will. Any further questions? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Our next item is 7 Fisher Court. And Jessica or Diksha? Oh, Michelle, thank you very much. I don't think you're a stranger to this property. All right, Michelle.
Through you, Chair, yes. So the property that I have before the committee today is 7 Fisher Court. 7 Fisher Court used to be addressed as 1 Oregon Drive. It's a 3-story mid-century log house in the Dune South neighborhood within the city, and the principal resource that contributes to its value is the log house. In terms of the design and physical value, the property is a rare, unique, and unexpected example of a late 19th century wedding cake design log house in its rural setting. The late Nicholas Hill, who was an architect and planner, provided a quote, "The style smacks of high architectural vogue, commissioned by a client with adventurous taste." It had been altered over the years. However, in the 90s and 2000s, there were new owners, and they went through an extensive restoration process. And today, the log structure has been rehabilitated with its wedding cake design, cedar shingles, the roof lantern, and many other features appropriate to a log house. There had also been a smokehouse that had been located a greater distance from the house, but as the plan of subdivision developed, it became clear that the costs to restore became higher, and as a, I guess, middle ground, they reduced the size of the lot, but they moved that stone smokehouse to the lot. So both the log house is in its original location, and the stone smokehouse is original. However, it was relocated to stay with that log house. In terms of its historic and associative value, it's connected to our early settlement, Richard Beasley, John Bean, the Stauffer family, as well as the Fisher family. Ownership through the 1800s has been a bit of a challenge to clarify, but there are definite connections, as I indicated, with Richard Beasley, John Bean, and the Fisher family. We know that, we believe that the Fisher family built the structure around 1860. However, no additional details are known with respect to the timing. Contextually, it does not have its historic context, but it's interesting to think of what that context would have been with the wedding cake design and the fact that you could go up into what I would call more of like a clerestory and view the work on their farm fields. And it was also noted that they welcomed artists to use that space as well to paint the landscape. The property does meet 3 of the 9 criteria, and as a result, I am recommending that we proceed with the notice of intent to designate in terms of process. Contacting the owners is our next step. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, are there questions for Michelle? Seeing none, I will read the statement, the recommendation, that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the cultural heritage value or interest be recognized and designation be pursued for 7 Fisher Court. And I wonder, Councillor Michaud, would you like to move this?
I'm really pleased to see this. It's nice to see a building of this heritage significance from the photo here in with new homes and stuff. And it's kind of refreshing when we get ones like this, right? And that it's so well taken care of as well. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Michaud has moved this. Any other questions? All those in favor? Moved unanimously. And I just have a few comments because I've seen this structure in its raw form, and it stood, shall we say, the context was a bowl. In other words, down here was the farm and up here was the ridge. And the developer at the time who developed that whole Dune South area, Monarch Properties, wasn't too happy about this particular building. However, your former heritage planner and a few members from the committee went out, and Nicholas Hill, as you mentioned, a former heritage planner, we went. And, you know, it looks really beautiful now. However, in that day, you know, you came upon it and it was covered with aluminum siding, and there it sat in the rough. However, Nicholas Hill said, well, I've seen too many of these buildings, and he ripped off a piece of the aluminum. And guess what? Underneath was were the logs, and they continued on. And so the dialogue continued with the developer back and forth. And on Dune Village Road, there was another, who is now the former owner, who had done other buildings and brought them back and was willing to take on the project, and so we have it today. But there's another little significant story about this particular area. And we pride ourselves on the Blues Festival, correct, Councillor Michaud? The Blues Festival. Well, I just want you to know that the Blues Festival started at this particular place. And from my back porch, I could hear Mel Brown singing and playing, and all the other blues performers. And so that continued on for quite a while, and then it moved down here to center of the city. So that's just a little aside. And I'm really thankful that this property has been brought forward. So,
Can I say something?
yes.
Sorry, can I just say something quickly?
I'm sorry. Who would like? Oh, Councillor Michaud.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for bringing us back up to a walk down memory lane there. You and I have had discussions on that, and that blues festival, it was called Frog Hollow, I believe, in the little valley that we were at, and I attended many of those festivals. So it's really, very nice to go back and walk back into that neighborhood, as I said, and see the big, beautiful new homes, and see that home with the significance and the love and care it gets from its owners, which is awesome. Thank you.
Yes, it was like an amphitheater, shall we say, a natural one. Sadly, we didn't get to save it. All right, now we'll proceed to our next one, which is 11-15 Pandora Avenue North. And Diksha, is that for you? Or Michelle? Thank you.
Sorry, I just realized I didn't turn my mic off. Through you, Chair, yes. So 1115 Pandora Avenue North is another property that we are proposing to bring forward to the committee for consideration to designate. This particular property meets 3 of the 9 criteria. In terms of the design and physical value, it's an example of the Italianate architectural style. It has many intact heritage attributes that represent that particular style, and has also recently undergone some work to, I'll say, rehabilitate the building itself. I believe, if I'm correct, Peter was one of the site people that filled out the evaluations for this property. Don't know if it rings a bell, but I could be incorrect, but what was indicated by those who had visited the site was that they could see there had been rehabilitation work done. I believe it was painted, the paint has been removed, but the original elements in terms of the wraparound veranda, the projecting bay with windows and storm windows, and the elaborate detail at the roof line have all been conserved. This view that you're looking at right now, just for interest's sake, is not actually the front of the building. This is the view of the building that you see from Pandora Avenue. So the building initially faced King Street East, and right now it is visible from King Street East. However, the lot that allows it to be visible is vacant. So I'm sure at some point in time that view will no longer be a public view. But it gives us the opportunity to understand the integrity of the building and what has been conserved and repaired. And for the most part, that original front elevation has also been conserved through the work that the either previous or current owners have undergone. From a historic and associative perspective, the property is connected with early settlement, prominent pioneer families like the Ebys and the Erbs, in particular Bishop Benjamin Eby and the Reverend Moses Herb and Menno Herb, and they were connected with early industries like Herb & Co. Glove Works, Brown & Herb, and eventually the original Huck Glove Company. The building itself was built by Bishop Benjamin Eby and his wife when they came to Canada in 1807. They initially were in a log house, and so this house was built circa 1840, I believe. My apologies. 1878, I was able to confirm. There's extensive information connected to that particular lot and who it was sold to throughout the 1800s. And an interesting note from 1878 that clarified the construction was that Menno Herb built for $2,500 on King Street at the end of the town a 2-story brick house in the Italianate style. So I always find those quotes interesting, that house cost $2,500 to build. I'm sure much, much more today. And then I briefly mentioned also the relationship with Herb & Co. Glove Works, and then ultimately the establishment of the Huck Glove Company, and did not identify contextual value for this particular property. Again, staff is proposing that Heritage Kitchener consider moving this property forward to consider the notice of intent to designate. That concludes my presentation.
And Michelle, you have concluded the
Yes,
presentation.
that concludes my
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff on this one? All right. I will read the recommendation that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the cultural heritage value or interest be recognized and designation be pursued for 11-15 Pandora Avenue North. Who would like to move this? Thank you, Andrew. Any further questions? If not, all those in favor? You moved unanimously. Thank you. Jessica, I think you had an update on our heritage assessments and so on. Would you like to do it under 5.1? Thank you. All right, so we have concluded the intention to designate properties, 4 of them today. And now we will go on to information items, heritage permit application tracking sheet. And again, Jessica, I invite you to outline the process if you feel it is of importance to outline the process for what has been going on. Thank you. Proceed.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So again, the process that we established at the beginning involves us contacting property owners at 4 different points in time, 2 prior to the actual formal designation process, and then the 2 required times during the formal designation process. So we're providing ample opportunity for engagement, and we are, of course, enlisting Heritage Kitchener's help as well in determining which properties that we pursue. So in that vein, we do have new field assignments that we would like to take a moment to pass out, if now is an appropriate time. Is that okay? Can we take 5 minutes to pass that out? I'm sorry, Jessica. I missed the message. Sorry, so I just said that we do have new field assignments for our Heritage Kitchener team now that the weather is warming up a bit, that we would like to take the moment to pass out before the end of this meeting. And then while that's being done, I can also we did want to provide an overall progress update on our project, because we have been working towards this at a number of months and our outcomes have been quite promising. So I did want to highlight that we have reviewed a total of 51 properties out of our goal of 80. So that is 64% of our project complete. And in comparison, we are about 62% of the way through our given time frame of 2 years. We have 8 months remaining. So we're well on track to meeting the goal that we established at the beginning of all of this work. And then for the properties to assign, we have 4 new ones for each team. We can also, because we're missing several members, and if there's ones who aren't available, we would like to point out that staff are more than happy to go on site visits with Heritage Kitchener members as well. So if you don't mind contacting us to arrange a time, we're happy to do that. But there are 4 new assignments for each team, and we're looking to have those completed for the May Heritage Kitchener meeting.
This feels a little like the Oscars. So there are a few packages yet to be distributed, correct? I have a question. Since a few of the team members are not here, is it the responsibility of the person who is here from the committee to contact the person with whom they work who is absent today, or is staff going to be contacting those people?
For the people that are absent today, I was saying that staff don't mind taking their place. So if committee wants to contact staff and arrange a time for one of us to accompany them on these site visits, we're more than happy to do that.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I just wondered if you could give us a sort of an overview of the 15 properties that are where no action is to be taken. Is it because the owners didn't want to proceed, or just? And I'm sure there might be different reasons, but can you give us an overview of that, please?
Yep. Through you, Madam Chair, I can certainly do that. So of the 15 properties that were reviewed and determined to have no action taken at this time, it may either be because they currently no longer exist. It could be because when site visits were done, it was determined that they've had enough alterations done to them that they've lost their heritage integrity. It could be that we thought there was historical or associative value to them, that when we did our further research, there turned out to not be any. There could be a few as well that we thought might be high priority and aren't at the time. So while they may meet the criteria for designation, we've determined that some of those properties could be moved to later in the year because they don't have as strong of a value as others that we would like to target first.
Okay, good, thank you. Can I just make an update too on, you may recall at the meeting our last meeting, we took a motion forward to call on the provincial government to give another 5 years to proceed with this, this designation process, and council passed the motion. So it doesn't mean we have another 5 years, but it does mean that council agreed to put pressure on the province to extend that deadline.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman, for the update. And we do know that there are many other councils that have likewise passed motions to extend the deadline. And we wait for the good news. Just keep hoping. If you see your MPP, give them a chat about it. Tell them we need that extra time. So it's worth it. Thank you for the update again, Councillor Chapman. Anything further from staff?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd just like to remind the committee members that please do your staff evaluations from the public realm. Please do not enter the property. If you get approached by owners, feel free to give them our contact information, and we're happy to take the conversation forward. Your safety is our main concern, so just keep those tips in mind when you're conducting these evaluations. Thank you again.
Thank you, Deksha. Good reminder. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, who would like to adjourn the meeting? Natalie would. Thank you, Natalie. All right. We'll see you in May.